Hey guys, welcome back to more r/malicious compliance stories with Ripe. What would you do if a stranger trespassed on your lake property and then claimed that he owned the entire place? This sovereign citizen was convinced that he owned my lake house and ordered me to either kick him out or shoot him if I dared to do it. Let's just say I take orders seriously. Let's dive right into the story. And the first one is a malicious compliance story that is titled "Sovereign Citizen Demands I Leave His Lake." Hey Reddit, this is my first time posting here, so bear with me. This is gonna be a long one. I bought the lake house because it is the one place my brain actually shuts off. The road is rough, the internet is slow, and the dock creaks loud enough at night to drown out everything else. I didn't grow up there. I'm not some old-timer with a cabin in the family going back 100 years. I'm a boring city boy with a corporate job that gives me too many screen hours and blood pressure my doctor side-eyes. I saved, I signed the papers, I paid the taxes, and every time I unlocked that faded blue door, I felt like I had cheated the world somehow. A quiet place just for me. But then life threw rocks. My parents got sick, I shuffled between hospital, errands and my job, and the lake house became an address I kept paying for but never visited. However, my mom's dementia came first, the kind that steals someone in increments. She would forget my name and then remember it an hour later and cry about forgetting. Then she would forget that she cried. The doctors used words like progressive and degenerative, like that made it easier to watch someone disappear while their body kept going. My dad got his Alzheimer's diagnosis 8 months after my mom's first major episode. I remember thinking the universe had a sixth sense of timing. They had been married 43 years and they had a routine for everything. Coffee at 6, news at 7, bed by 9:30. When dad started forgetting how to make coffee, my mom would try to help him and forget why they were in the kitchen. I would find them standing there, confused, holding mugs like artifacts from someone else's life. I moved them closer to me, sold their house, got them into a facility that didn't smell like defeat, visited every day after work. Some days were almost normal. Mom would ask about the lake house and I would describe the sunset like I'd just seen it, even though I hadn't been there in months. My dad would nod along, sometimes remembering the time we tried to fish there and caught nothing but a boot. Other days were harder. My mom stopped recognizing me around month 14. My dad followed 6 months later. They would sit together in the common room, two strangers who had built a life together, holding hands because muscle memory outlasts names. I would sit with them anyway, talking about nothing, hoping some part of them still knew that I was there. And well, my mom went first, pneumonia in the end. My dad lasted another 4 months. The facility staff said he kept asking for his wife without remembering that she had died. When he finally went, it felt like watching someone let go of a rope that'd been gripping long after their hands went numb. After the funerals, after the paperwork, after dividing up 50 years of shared objects between donation bins and trash bags, I sat in my apartment and realized I had not taken a full breath in 2 years. The city felt like it was pressing in from all sides. Every siren was a reminder, and every hospital I drove past was a ghost. I needed to go somewhere that didn't hurt to look at. I needed the lake house. I stopped by once to winterize, shut off water, lock things up and then disappeared again. 2 years went by like that. It wasn't smart from a property owner's perspective, but when someone you love is going through it, you're just running on fumes and hoping the wheels don't come off. The house sat there while I was elsewhere, and when I finally drove up again, I knew something was wrong before I even put the truck in park. There was a flagpole in front that had not existed before. The flag was not the normal one you're picturing either. It was some mashup banner with a Gatson snake, Latin words like sui juris, and a design you would only see on certain corners of the internet. On the gate there was a plywood sign painted with "Private Sovereign Property" in big block letters. Below it, someone had stapled a stack of papers inside a plastic sleeve saying allodial title, land patent, fee simple absolute, common law court, and other phrases that instantly set off the same headache I get when a software update fails for the 10th time. I guess OP is referring to Windows updates that you don't want, but still Windows forces them upon you. Anyway, a second sign said, "No trespass, consent by entry fee, $50,000 in gold." I didn't make it past the gate before a man came out of the house like he had been waiting. He wore a camo jacket and carried himself like a guy who spends a lot of time telling people what they cannot do. He had a beard that tried to make up for a lack of chin and a chest puffed so hard I worried he would pass out. He looked at me like he knew exactly who I was, aka the enemy, the outsider, the fool. "You're on my land," he announced as if he were delivering a weather report. "Turn around." I had my keys in the car, the same keys I'd been using on that door since the day I signed. I told him I owned the place. Calm voice, steady breath. This was not new to me. You get the same tone dealing with a rude customer or a chaotic coworker. He cracked a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "City boy, huh? Shows up 2 years late, thinks corporate paper magic means anything out here." He tapped the land patent page with one knuckle. "This land has been in my family for generations. We perfected our claim on a common law. Your fake deed doesn't apply to a sovereign man." "Well then, I'm gonna unlock my front door," I said. "You set foot on that porch and you are trespassing on sovereign territory. Don't do it or do it and see what happens." He leaned on the last part like he wanted me to cross the line. "Go ahead, kick me out if you think you can. Or better yet, shoot me, city boy. I dare you." I didn't take the bait. 2 years of being stretched thin teaches you when to pick your fights. I backed up to the public road shoulder and called the non-emergency line thinking that's how you deal with a sovereign citizen. 2 deputies came after about 40 minutes. They asked for my paperwork and they looked at his papers too, and I watched their faces do that thing where you feel your soul leaves your body for a minute. If you've ever dealt with this flavor of nonsense, you know the look. Officers who have seen a lot but not quite this brand of paperwork salad. They walked the guy through the basics and he met each point with a word salad of "codes don't apply to a living man on the land," and "color of law," and "contracts require wet ink signatures from 2 witnesses," and "you're violating my 4th Amendment rights under Article 4 of the Constitution." He never raised his voice, which somehow made it even worse. He was certain about the things he was saying. He demanded that they remove me from his ancestral land and his house because he had apparently perfected his common law claim by being there for 2 years. He said he had put me on notice. He had filed affidavits of truth. And by the way, guys, that's actually not too far off because I've recently filed affidavits of YouTube likes, which means that you're obligated to like the video, otherwise a common citizen might annex your property. Anyway, thank you so much in advance. He pointed to a laminated copy of some Uniform Commercial Code document and then to a printed contract that said by entering the driveway, I now owed him $50,000 in gold coins. Here is where the first bitter pill went down. The deputies could not physically remove him that day. The paperwork was a nightmare, by the way. They explained that while his sovereign citizen documents were complete nonsense, the remote location, his established presence, and the complexity of sorting out the conflicting claims meant they couldn't do anything right now. And by the way, OP gave a little bit too much personal information there, so I don't want to dox him, so I just censored it. They said it was temporarily being treated as a civil dispute over property possession until a judge could sort through the mess. They told me to file for emergency possession through the courts. They warned him not to threaten anyone and to keep the peace. He grinned at me as they left and said, "Guess you will have to leave my ancestral lake now, corporate slave." I'm not proud of how my stomach dropped. That little blue door looked impossibly far away. I sat in my truck and thought about the past 2 years and how I had let this place sit empty, and then I did what I always do when I'm overwhelmed. I started making lists. I would document, notice, record, and keep my cool. If he wanted games about rules, I would play by the real ones to the letter. Also, he had given me specific instructions. "Kick me out," he said, "or shoot me." Fine, I will follow his demands to the letter. I ordered a fresh survey too. The surveyor I hired had the patience of a saint and the boots of a mountain goat. He hiked the pins and confirmed what I already knew. My lines had not moved just because a stranger stapled a fake land patent to a fence post. I paid for bright new stakes, flags, and a hard copy map. I had him stick extra flags along the shoreline and the path to the boathouse. I took a million photos like I was trying to sell the place to a picky buyer. I posted no trespassing signs at intervals that would make a lawyer nod. I put one at eye level on the boathouse door with my name and parcel number and the exact language the county suggests. I posted a notice to quit drafted by a local attorney. Nothing fancy, no court dates yet, just "you're not authorized. You must leave within 72 hours. I sent a copy to the address the guy scribbled as mailing location and another to occupant, certified return receipt. I printed the tracking. I kept a binder because if this was gonna be a paperwork fight, I was going to be the king of boring paperwork. "The paper tyrant returns," the man said the next time I showed up. He had added another plywood sign saying, "Law of the land, not of the sea." Apparently some sovereign citizen thing about maritime law. He had also built a little lean-to next to the boathouse, complete with a wood stove pipe poking out. He had run an extension cord back to my house meter and was happily stealing power that I was paying for. "You got my notice," I told him from the property line. "You need to leave." "Perfect acclaim," he said. "Adverse possession, 2 years of care and improvement. Your absence is abandonment and consent." Adverse possession, by the way, requires 10 years minimum in our state, plus open and notorious use, exclusive possession, and hostile occupation, none of which applied here since I'd been paying taxes and maintaining insurance the whole time. But I kept my voice even. "You're trespassing. Please leave now." "Kick me out then," he said, all teeth. "Or shoot me, city boy. Go on, I dare you. Do something instead of hiding behind your corporate papers." So I called the deputies again. Visit 2 resulted in the same basic outcome. They documented the ongoing dispute, reminded him about keeping the peace, and told me to continue with the court process. But this time, I was ready. I pulled out my phone and recorded myself asking the squatter directly, "Are you instructing me to physically remove you from my property?" "Damn right I am," he said to the camera. "Kick me out or shoot me. Stop being a coward." "And you're aware that would be assault and battery if I physically touched you?" "I'm giving you permission, corporate slave. Do it." Well, perfect. Now I had him on video explicitly demanding I commit crimes against him. I thanked him politely and left. The deputies watched this exchange and shook their heads. One told me quietly, "Document everything. This guy's looking for a fight." And by the way, guys, if you were in this situation right now, would you comply with the demands of this crazy sovereign citizen guy? His demands being that you either kick him out or shoot him. I would say if you're defending your private property, there's pretty much only one option here. Either way, let me know in the comments. So then I took pictures of the extension cord theft, the illegal wood stove installation, the trash bags piled behind the boathouse, and the fish heads he had dumped by the waterline. I sent the photos to the county environmental health office with a formal complaint, and they referred me to wildlife enforcement about the fish waste. I called the utility company about power theft and they dispatched, saw the tampered meter, documented it, and said they would pursue charges but needed the occupant issue resolved first through civil channels. When I say I tried 5 times over 2 months, I don't mean 5 conversations, I mean 5 separate documented visits, each following his explicit instructions while staying completely legal. The second time I brought my survey map and showed him the pins from the property line. He said, "Pins are corporate, lines on paper are maritime admiralty. I'm under common law of the land." I recorded that too, and the third time I brought a witness, my cousin who lives closer and has a phone with more storage than sense. My cousin stood on the public road and recorded everything. I called out from the property line, "Sir, you've repeatedly instructed me to kick you out or shoot you. I'm asking you to leave voluntarily so I don't have to comply with your instructions." "You think your little movie will help you in Admiralty Court?" He called my cousin an oath-breaking cameraman and told me again to stop being a paper-pushing coward and try to move me like a real man. I documented his refusal to leave and his renewed demands for physical confrontation. He kept escalating his demands though. "Kick me out, shoot me, be a man, stop hiding behind papers." He then called me again a paper tyrant one day, a city boy the next, and added useless corporate coward when I refused to take his bait. I didn't bite though. I was playing the world's most boring long game and he was writing my script for me without knowing it. Each time I recorded myself politely explaining, "Sir, you've instructed me to kick you out or shoot you. I'm declining to assault you. Please leave voluntarily." And each time he would get angrier and demand more forcefully that I do something and stop being a coward. Somewhere in there he got bolder. He started coming up to the property line when he saw my truck. He would stand so close and talk about who belongs here and how a real man protects his homestead. Once he told me he had annexed my paddle boat too, and I told him to enjoy the cracked seat and the spider nests because if he capsized that thing I would leave him bobbing until the deputies arrived. He called me cruel, and the next day the paddle boat was back on my side like a passive-aggressive peace offering or a subtle threat. I replaced the chain and lock, and then he ordered something large online and had it shipped to his address, aka my address, and the delivery driver left a big package by the gate. I dragged it back to the public road and called the shipping company to pick it up for return because it had been delivered without my consent. He screamed about interference with interstate commerce and mail theft, waving his laminated UCC filing, and finally said, "Bring it back or I will come take it and everything else. You wanna play rules? I will show you natural law rules." Around then, the smell started. The fish heads were bad enough, but now he was burning something that wasn't supposed to be burned, treated lumber, plastic bottles, and the smoke drifted across the water and into the trees. I called environmental health again and then the county fire marshal about illegal burning during fire season. They took statements, told me they needed to catch the fire in progress, and gave me the emergency number for active environmental violations. He started pushing more aggressively now. He would walk right up to the property line when I arrived, telling me, "Men sell things face to face, not with papers." He announced one day that he had seized the boathouse for his family's generational use. He had never mentioned family before and never saw anyone else, but he hammered another sign that read, "Protected by natural law. Trespassers will be dealt with." He had a knife on his belt now, a fixed blade in a leather sheath, handle worn like he had spent hours running his thumb along it. I photographed that too from the road. "Don't photograph me," he snapped. "Consent withdrawn." "You posted terms of entry," I said. "I'm photographing from public property per your own rules." "You have repeatedly demanded I shoot you. I'm just documenting your escalating behavior as requested." He walked forward, put his hands on the wire at the property line, and leaned his face close enough that I could see the spit shine on his teeth. "Kick me out then or shoot me. You won't, you can't, and you're too weak." I walked away that day. I sat in my truck and shook until it passed. I told myself that he was asking me for exactly what he needed, conflict, and that I would not give it to him until he forced my hand legally. It's a weird thing to feel like the adult in the room only because you're the one holding the clipboard. The final visit was the last one though. I didn't know that yet when I pulled up. The air was clear for once and the water had that dull mirror look. I parked at the shoulder, took my binder and started the same routine I had done every time for 2 months. Call from the line, read aloud the notice, state that I was revoking any implied license to be on my property, ask him to leave and offer him one final chance to comply before I had to follow his repeated instructions. He came out faster than I'd ever seen, like he'd been sleeping in his boots. "There he is," he said loudly as if to an audience. "The corporate coward returns to make more empty threats." "I'm not entering your claim territory," I said, pulling out my phone to record. "I'm standing on public property and offering you one final opportunity to leave before I comply with your repeated demands." "What demands?" he asked, walking closer to the line. "Your explicit instructions to kick you out or shoot you. You've demanded this many times on camera. I'm prepared to comply if you don't leave voluntarily." That stopped him for a second. He looked confused, like he had forgotten his own words. Then his face darkened. "You don't have the balls. Sir, you're trespassing, I'm armed legally, and you've repeatedly demanded I shoot you. Leave now, or I will comply with your instructions." He closed the distance in 3 long strides. He didn't stop at the flags this time. He put a boot right on my side of the line, looked down at it, and then looked up like he wanted me to say something. I did the most boring thing in the world. I told him I was calling 911 and that he was now criminally trespassing after my explicit warning. He reached down, pulled the knife from his belt and held it low at his side. It was not raised yet, it was not lunging, but it was there and it made my mouth go dry. I took 2 steps back and spoke clearly to the phone. 911, I'm on County Road 15, mile marker 7, being threatened by an armed trespasser who has repeatedly demanded I shoot him. He's now approaching me with a knife. He stared at my hand holding the phone, then at my face, and he said in the same steady voice as always, "There it is. Now you have to choose. Kick me out like a man or shoot me like you keep threatening. Do something instead of calling your government masters." People talk a big game about how they would react when threatened. People who have never been in that moment love to tell you that they would do X or Y like it's a simple menu pick. I never wanted to be a person with an opinion about that. I grew up in a place where people hunted, where a lot of dads had gun safes, but I'd never made it part of my identity. After the first time he said, "Shoot me," I started carrying legally when I drove out there because a deputy suggested I not be unarmed in a remote location with an increasingly hostile squatter, so I trained, I practiced, and I kept it holstered in the truck unless I was stepping out for these documented encounters. That day, I had it on me because I'd gotten used to being cautious and because he'd been demanding for 2 months that I use it. He kept walking towards me, knife still down but advancing. I took 3 more steps back and told him clearly, loud enough for the 911 dispatcher, "Stop advancing, don't come closer," and he told me I was not a real man. He told me he would cut out the corporate heart and then he rushed. It was a sudden sprint forward with the knife raised from a guy who had been demanding this exact outcome for weeks. All the calm I'd practiced was gone in 1 second of pure survival instinct, and I did exactly what he'd been demanding I do for 2 months. I drew, I aimed center mass like I had trained, and I fired twice. He dropped the knife and I stopped shooting. I backed up, gun down, phone up, shouting to the dispatcher that shots had been fired, that I was now on the roadway, that the attacker had charged with a knife after repeatedly demanding I shoot him, and that he was down on the public shoulder. Time did weird things after that. My ears rang in a way that made everything sound underwater. I could still hear him groaning and swearing. He was not dead. He was rolling, clutching his side and shoulder, trying to get air back. I put the gun on the hood of my truck, hands up like a statue, and waited exactly where the dispatcher told me to wait. And by the way guys, just to quickly interject here, would you have done the same thing as OP? Would you have shot this sovereign citizen that annexed your property, or would you have just let the police done their job? Even though, OP tried to let the police do their job several times and they never did. So do you think what OP did was right or wrong? Let me know in the comments. Either way, neighbors I'd never met came out onto the gravel road farther down. One yelled that they'd seen him come at me with a knife. Another shouted that they'd heard him, daring you to shoot him for weeks. Deputies arrived with sirens and everything, weapons drawn, commands shouted, the whole drill. I followed every instruction like I was the poster child for Compliance 101. They secured the scene, disarmed and cuffed the wounded squatter, and called paramedics. I gave my preliminary statement with my hands shaking so hard the clipboard rattled. My cousin showed up prior to this whole incident, by the way, because I texted him before, and he told the deputies that he had camera footage he had recorded from his truck at the mile marker because he had a really bad feeling about this. His dashcam and phone camera caught almost the entire situation happening. The detectives who arrived later were not deciding anything in that moment beyond immediate safety and evidence collection, which is how it should be. They took my firearm to log it, and they took my famous binder. They took witness statements and they measured distances. They reviewed my cousin's footage and the 911 recording. They told me I could go home after giving a full statement, but to expect follow-up investigation and a possible grand jury review, since any shooting involving injury requires that level of scrutiny. To make a long story short, the sovereign citizen lived. That's something I hold on to because I never wanted a death on my hands. Even when he pushed and pushed for exactly that outcome, he had surgery to repair damage to his side and shoulder. He also had to face the reality of a world that doesn't bend because someone printed natural law and stapled it to a gate. There were charges: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, criminal trespass, theft of utilities, environmental violations, and about 6 other things that stacked up from 2 months of documented bad behavior. The phrase attempted assault with intent to cause serious bodily harm came up in his charging documents, and the grand jury declined to indict me. The prosecutor's statement mentioned clear pattern of self-defense after months of documented threats and explicit demands for violence by the perpetrator. The defense attorney he eventually got tried to paint me as the aggressor, but it's hard to argue that when your client is on camera saying shoot me, 15 times and then charging with a knife. The property dispute evaporated once he was gone. Turns out his generational claim was complete fiction, and he had never owned so much as a parking space anywhere in the county, and I also had to sit with the fact that I pulled the trigger. That doesn't just roll off even when you are legally clear, even with neighbors telling me I had no choice, even with deputies and later a prosecutor saying the same. Your brain replays it in the worst way at 3 AM. People asked why I did not push harder earlier, why I didn't just bring a crew and physically remove him from the start. Well, it's easy to imagine you would roll up with buddies and drag the guy to the road. It's also easy to imagine the headlines that follow when that goes bad. He wanted a fight, he literally ordered me to give him one, and he demanded that I kick him out or shoot him. The first part was not legal for me to do. The second part was the last thing I ever wanted to do. He made the rules of our interaction though. I just took them literally and followed them to their logical conclusion. People like him want everything to be a battlefield. They think they are fighting some grand war in everyday interactions, but I did not win a war. I just survived a guy who was itching for one. He got exactly what he asked for, delivered exactly the way the law allows when someone charges you with a knife after months of documented demands for violence on your own property. And the next one is another malicious compliance story, although a little bit less violent than the last one. It is titled, "Report everything that happens on these files, or else." Okay then, I will. 10 years ago, I worked under a manager who could best be described as old school old battle axe. It was an HR office. I don't work in HR anymore, and this is probably why. I was an intern starting a white-collar HR corporate job after 10 years of blue-collar work. I was excited to be in a climate-controlled office. I dreamed for years for this and put myself through university by my bootstrap. I would do anything for air-conditioned office. I just broke my back a year prior and had a difficult time finishing my final year. She was known across the office for being impossible to please and for running through staff faster than the copier toner. Nobody lasted more than a year, I was told. From my first day, I was on her radar. I made occasional typing mistakes because of medication I was on that affects short-term memory. I always ran spell check and proved my work carefully, but she treated every minor error like a personal failure. She would scold me for the smallest things. Once she gave me an hour-long lecture about professionalism because I wore a blue shirt instead of a white one. I wore a sweater to a client meeting because their thermostat was broken and it was minus 20 degrees outside. I got shouted at by my supervisor for wearing the sweater harder than I did on any work site. Every day felt like inhaling glass shards, and then came the instruction that broke the camel's back. She told me I needed to deliver a daily oral report on every client file I managed. These were not short updates. She expected me to know every number, every email, every call from memory, word for word what was said. If I even got one word out of this transcript off, I was not fit to be there. She said, "From the moment the sun rises on this office to the moment it sets, you are to report everything that happens in these reports." She knew I had a memory-related disability from a past concussion. She knew it would overwhelm me, so I decided to take her words literally. That night I opened Excel and began logging everything. Every keystroke, I wrote it all down, and I even practiced my delivery so I could recite it perfectly. The next morning, when she called me into her office, I began. I walked from my car to the building, opened the office door with my right hand, moderate pressure, entered the building, greeted the receptionist, made a coffee in the Keurig for 25 seconds. Then I sat at my desk, adjusted my chair, started a computer, opened Excel, began typing reports, ensuring keyboard sound remained with an acceptable volume to avoid disturbing senior management arriving 45 minutes after 9 a.m. I continued like that for almost the entire hour, interrupted. She tried to interrupt, but I reminded her gently that I was just reporting everything that happens, and when it was over, she just stared at me. A week later, HR called me in. Yes, HR does have its own HR. I explained the situation exactly as it happened, that I was following her directive word for word. I had detailed documentation. By this time, I wrote down everything that happened in the office, and they agreed it was not sustainable. Within a month, I was transferred to a new department. I was laid off 3 months later because that boss quit, but I got a good reference. And the next one is another malicious compliance story and is titled "The Paint Looks Fine." So years ago, I worked for a well-known chain of transmission shops. The owner/manager, we will call him Jim, was a decent guy and a great boss. We were also pretty successful. He insisted on keeping the shop clean, and a commercial was even filmed there. However, the outside of the shop is painted a patented red, white and blue pattern, and while ours was very faded, the company is supposed to repaint them every few years. The problem is, Jim put in request after request, but corporate insisted it was fine. They suggested if it was so important to him, he could repaint it at his own expense. So, what did he do? He did exactly as they said. Mr. Jim went to the paint store and bought several gallons of the cheapest, ugliest brown paint he could find and paid us out of pocket to paint the outside. I mean, this was the color of poop. And then he waited for a response. And sure enough, he got one. 2 weeks later, corporate called in a huff. "The shop is supposed to be red, white and blue," Jim reminded them. He was allowed to paint the shop at his own expense. And guess what? They never said what color. Within a week after that, a crew was sent out and we had a pretty new paint shop. And yeah guys, thank you so much for listening today. If you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist on the left. Otherwise, I will see you again tomorrow.